10th week of the Iran war, and we have an unprecedented thing happening right now in the oil markets, the global markets. My name is Cyrus Janssen, joined by Alex from Reporterfy Media. Alex, how are you this Sunday morning or evening for you in Chongqing, my friend?
Hey, Cyrus, how are you? Great to see you.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, we're going to have a good show today. There's a big thing. A big theme is obviously talking about the oil markets here. And Alex, I was listening to an amazing segment last night, talking with a hedge fund manager who just said, what most people are not realizing is that this is the biggest disruption to the energy industry in anybody's lifetime. Anybody that's alive today has never lived through an energy disruption at this point of this magnitude. And he said, actually, markets are just not really understanding it right now. Obviously, we're seeing the United States stock market is near an all-time high. We're certainly seeing, the messaging from the Trump administration is that, this is the golden age of America. Everything's going very well and according to plan. But honestly, we're starting to see a lot of difference in what's actually happening in the real economy, what's actually happening in the daily lives of Americans. And honestly, there's a tsunami coming of financial pain. And we're going to break it down because, we were the first ones, Alex and I, very early, this was about the end of February, we're talking about oil, going well past $100. We were on a live stream. A lot of people thought that was a little bit ridiculous. We've then seen, of course, oil prices come back down. But of course, in the last 7 days, guys, if you've seen that oil market, the price has risen substantially to the highest point that we've seen in this Iran war. Alex, and I know you're the man on the ground that's going to give us the insights into this oil market. A lot of questions from our audience. A lot of people want to know this, Alex. So really excited to jump into today's conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting, immediately opening up my chat, I have some people that say that, what's going on with the title? Oil is at 102. Paper it is. Delivery, it's definitely not. And you can get those statistics on government websites that will basically clear it up for everyone that oil is trading at anywhere from 25 to a 40% premium on the derivative prices that are being traded on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the CME in Chicago. Now, we also have to take into consideration that these markets do trade outside the hours. So if you're getting delayed quotes from Friday, that is not statistically correct, as in quotes from Sunday night, which the CME will open up. So that's where your statistics are when it comes to oil. Now, this is going to, I'm going to get into this a little bit later, and it's great to have you on the program here with me tonight, Cyrus, because there is so much to unpack here. We have so many things to explain to the average person. What does this really mean? What does an oil crisis mean? Does it mean just I pay more at the pump? Well, that's not the case. I'm going to hand it back to you, Cyrus. And when you give me time a little bit later, I'm going to go in depth as usual.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I want to give a huge shout out to Trevor Norman, a longtime supporter. Thank you for the super chat. He asked a question: when will Trump tell the truth that Iran stated they will never want atomic weapons? Well, I think, Trevor, the easy answer to that is he's never going to say that, because that, of course, ruins, his entire narrative. And again, I think what we're looking at here, I want to talk a little bit first about the Iran war, kind of where we are, because, guys, we're into the 10th week of this conflict. And what's interesting here is, you're hearing some very interesting talking points from the Trump administration. Right now I was chatting with many people. They're saying, look, right now, the Iranians are essentially getting starved, right? This blockade, the United States has launched a very successful blockade against Iran. And, the whole theory with this is that this is going to bring Iran to the negotiating table. We've given a taste of their own medicine. Iran is not able to export that oil as well. And as a result of that, the United States is going to have supreme leverage in here, and everything's under control. I think it's a little bit of a shallow analysis. And I've seen a lot of this analysis on Twitter over the last few days, Alex, where people are saying, look, Iranians are going to come begging for a deal. And I just don't believe that's going to happen. And the main thing that people are forgetting here is that this is an existential threat to Iran's survival. They have the ability to go the distance. They do not care about exporting oil. They don't care if their currency is rising, if inflation is rising. For them, this is, again, another attack from the United States and Israel, and one that they are going to have to resist if they're going to have any chance of actual survival. We look at the concessions that the United States government wants. Basically, it's, give up all your uranium, give up all your missiles, give up everything that's allowed you to survive until this point. If you do that, well, maybe we're going to play nice in the future. Maybe the United States and Israel will not bomb you in the future. One of the things we have to realize about this is that, again, it's an interesting one. Why do people not attack Pakistan or Israel or North Korea, these major countries with a nuclear bomb or with other big weapons? Is because they have the nuclear capacity. And so again, this is what's proven in 2026 is that if you have a nuclear bomb, your country remains safe. We've seen countries that have given up their weapons. We've seen countries that have abandoned their programs in exchange for United States protection. It usually doesn't work out for them, and it actually leaves them vulnerable to future attacks. Let's not forget that the last time the United States wanted to engage Iran in a peace conversation, the United States actually used that as an opportunity to go back and actually launch an attack, and so actually bomb them and kill people. So it's a really difficult time right now, I think, for a lot of people to understand. But Alex, you hit a good point right here, talking about the gas prices and the U.S. economy. Trump right now is, really is I would say just at the very end of people's patience dealing with the gas prices that are going out of control. He doesn't have much time here. So again, there's a big theory here that Iran actually can outweigh the United States. Basically, the United States is going to have to chicken out at the end because both countries are certainly hurting. But, how long is that sustainable for the United States? Again, I kind of opened this segment here talking about the simple fact that we have seen the largest disruption to the industry in anybody's lifetime. And that is going to be washing out here very soon.
It's going to be complicated, and it's going to be complicated for many reasons. One of them is the petrodollar, and that is up for discussion tonight, because we have also seen the United Arab Emirates head for the exits when it comes to OPEC. Now, this is going to disrupt that market. We have to now guess, what is the UAE going to do? Are they going to flood the market? Is the boys in the GCC going to say, okay, if they're wide open to sell, how about we ratchet down and reduce it? So it's going to have to be a bit of guessing game here to properly calibrate that. Now, we're at the behest of what is the GCC countries going to do? What price a barrel do they want? And is it an 80, a 90, $100 barrel? And we see weakness here. Let's pull up this slide here from last week where I was explaining oil. If our audience didn't see it, it's a very good example. Just have a look at the monitor here. Now, this is talking about the Brent spot, and that's deliverable oil. Now, we have to also remember, when oil gets to a country, it either goes to a refinery on the coast or it gets shipped by truck, container, all the way up to a facility that can make it into, whether it's gas, whatever the oil and petroleum is used for. So it gets very complex. And as logistical prices rise, so does oil. Now, this other example I'm going to bring you to is this here. We're going to look into this in a little bit of detail here. Okay, so this, I'm going to try to explain this to people here. And I'll do my best, so no problem. I'll just wait for it comes up on the screen. So, Cyrus, can you see that on our screen here? So this is when paper markets dictate the reality here. And here's how it goes. Paper market derivatives, that's oil, futures, options. Then we see the physical market. Now, here's where the distortion happens. And what follows it? Everyone just thinks, okay, price of oil, we got lots in the United States, no problem. We're still going to be able to pay a couple more dollars a gallon. Everyone should be fine. Well, that's not the case, because Saudi Arabia has a problem here. Now, Saudi needs to recycle its petrodollars into U.S. debt. It can't do that if it's not selling. And we're talking about 1/5 of the global supply. So you take anywhere from 8 million to 20 million barrels out of the market. Well, they have the inability to actually buy U.S. treasuries. If the U.S. treasuries aren't bought, there's less demand for it, and the yields go up. We've seen the yields go up in the market the last couple of weeks. Then what happens is, and this is where it hits everyone, mortgages go higher, student loan goes higher, credit cards go higher, you name it, it is there. And it hits everybody's wallet. So even though in the United States, we have this, I guess, warm, fuzzy feeling from the administration saying, hey, guys, no problem. This will be over in days. This will be over in weeks. This will be over in months. Iran wants to do a deal. The Strait of Hormuz, they closed it, but it was open a little bit, but then it's closed again. But we want it open, but they're having it closed, but we're winning. What do you think of that, Cyrus?
Yeah, that's basically the messaging here. Actually, I've got an interesting clip here. Let's play that Jerome Powell clip where he actually says the quiet part out loud about the U.S. economy. Check this out, guys.
But remember, when gas prices go up, that's disposable income coming out of people's pockets, so they're going to spend less on other things. So there will be a hit to GDP. So it's a...
Well, hit to GDP.
All right. So a nice quick clip there, but basically this is something that, this is why Jerome Powell and Donald Trump are not, on friendly terms right now, because, Donald Trump is saying, look, we're ushering in the golden age of America. Everybody's winning. I'm winning so much. Everything's going amazing. But the reality is the GDP numbers for Q1 2026 just came out. I want to remind people, a couple of weeks on our show, we were playing the Howard Lutnick clip of him saying that the first quarter of 2026 is going to be brilliant. We are going to have a 5% growth of GDP. We're going to knock it out of the water. Actually, the forecast was 2.2%, and actually the reality was 2%. So the United States economy is slowing down. We see the rise in gas prices. And don't forget, guys, we're just at the beginning of the summer season. Memorial Day holiday is at the end of May. That's in about 4 weeks' time. That's the official kickoff of the summer holiday, which, of course, is the big travel. Alex, we've also seen Spirit Airlines just go bankrupt here in the United States. Budget-friendly airline. Interesting enough, they were actually JetBlue Airlines was actually trying to buy them out a few years ago. I believe that if they would have been able to buy them, they would have had together about a 9% market share of the U.S. Air economy there. But of course, the United States blocked that, saying that, no, that's socialism. You can't have that much of a monopoly. I don't know how 9% is considered a monopoly. The United States, it was Elizabeth Warren that blocked that deal. And here we are, bankrupt, 14,000, I believe staff members now have been,
17,
is it 17,000?
Yeah, I want to add to that.
Yeah, please.
Let me add to that. And I'm glad you brought that up. And it's really a really terrible time when 17,000 people lose their job. And they lost it in a very poor negotiation by the Trump administration. When you try to squeeze bondholders on a deal into bankruptcy and you feel that the government should get in there and be the 90% controlling shareholder of the company, the bondholders are going to go, let's go to the wall. Let's take this company right to the wall. And we'll take the airline leases. We'll take the, all the internal stuff that is run on the airlines, the machinery. And even if we sell it for 10, 15, 20 cents on the dollar, or we just tell the creditors, it's been nice, you get 5 cents on the dollar, and we relaunch it, repaint the planes a different color, no problem. But that was the government going in there negotiating, coming up with about $500 million. Can you imagine this? Only coming up with $500 million. $500 million to keep a company that has been, in business for 30 years. I'm not going to say that airlines are a great investment, but we're talking 17,000 jobs. So if you can go in there and you can bail out the automotive industry, spend 200 to 300 billion in Iran, why can't you spend $1 billion to save 17,000 people's jobs? But hey, that's okay. That's Lutnick's, getting in there, making a deal. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about with people people are really missing the point here. Again, I've stressed it. Paper market trades, the derivative trades, pretty much never get delivered. We are talking spot. Cyrus, you know this. Again, we have to tell our audience, probably for the 10th time over the last 6 months here, and send a warning out to you guys again. The last VLCC container has unloaded its oils on the shores of America. Remember, the speed of these containers are almost the same speed as a bicycle. They're not coming out, they're not going in. So when do you think the nearest ships are going to be sailing and bringing some of that Saudi petrodollars to the United States if this thing has been closed since, what, February? What day are we at now, Cyrus?
Yeah, we're entering the 10th week of the war right now, Alex. So we're looking at 10 weeks. And
I'm waiting for oil shock here. And I love how sometimes we get these people out there saying, what are you talking about? There's no way it'll go to 80. There's no way it'll go to 90. There's no way it'll go to 100, 150, 200. Yeah, just around the corner.
Yeah, I think we're going to see $150 a barrel very quickly here within the next couple of weeks, guys. And again, that's the key point that I want people to understand is that the market is always looking forward. So again, and the interesting thing that we have to understand about this Trump economy and what's happening is that the market is moving based on the tweets of Donald Trump. So he can send a market, he can basically reverse the stock market. If it's having a bad day, he will go to Twitter, he will send out some tweets, essentially giving that market relief. And we're seeing a lot of market manipulation from the Trump administration. But the problem is that at the end of the day, the fundamentals don't lie. And the key point that Alex just said is that those last ships have arrived now in the United States. So this was the buffer. We now see, there's an interesting thing happening here, right? We actually see the United States is exporting a tremendous amount of oil. So there's never been a higher demand for U.S. oil. They're exporting a tremendous amount. The United States oil reserve is at a historic all-time low right now. So again, we're exporting a lot, because we're trying to keep up with demand. But that being said, again, I want people to understand, even though we are a net oil exporter, we still are pulling, the oil reacts in one market, right? So there's only one price for oil, and it's everywhere in the world. And the problem is that is going to continue to rise. So again, I cannot stress this big enough. The fact that we've seen the largest disruption to energy in anybody's lifetime, anybody that's alive today, this has been the largest supply disruption, and that's going to wash out here in the next couple of weeks. And again, going into these summer months.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Cyrus. Telling everybody that oil's trading everywhere, and somebody's willing to bid it up. If your country isn't getting deliverables of oil, you're going to go to where you can get it at what price. And we have to remember that, yes, the U.S. is a huge exporter of oil, and of course, it also imports a lot too. It imports because it needs certain types of oils to be compatible with its refineries. Not all oil is refined in the United States. A lot of that goes to export too. A lot of it cannot even be used for consumption in the United States, so it gets forwarded on. Now that's the problem here. We're going to see the bottleneck. The bottleneck is already here, of course. You've seen it in the Strait of Hormuz, and you've seen it with the Saudis. All we have to do is, when people doubt what's going on in the market, just look at the U.S. Treasuries. They are at a record low. And over 90 billion have been sold down here over the last month and a half here. I believe it's about 98 billion, because these other countries need to generate money. I mean, if the lights, the oil is shut off in Saudi, well, you need money and you got to keep your citizens happy of that country. So this is the dilemma that we're in. This is the shocking part, that we haven't seen it yet. We are still being, I guess, a little bit compensated by the emergency fund, where 400 million barrels were burned through in 20 days. And that entire stockpile is about 1.2 to 1.3 billion barrels of oil. Just do the math on that, another 30 to 60 days, and that's gone. And that has taken decades around the world to build up that emergency fund at relatively decent prices. And what's that going to cost for the U.S. to refill its tank? of 100 million billions of oil, it's going to cost a staggering amount of money. And that's going to come from you, the taxpayer. So I think in a way, we're starting to see the weakness here. We saw Spirit Airlines really go to the wall in quite a dramatic form here. We're going to see more over the next few weeks. Whether they're airlines, trucking companies. I mean, look at here. This is a little bit off the topic, but look at the Daily Wire last night. Laid off a bunch of its staff in media. Now, why would a Daily Wire be laying off so many people in media? Could it be the message that the people have just tuned out on that channel? Did you hear about that, Cyrus?
I actually did not hear about that, but it doesn't surprise me, Alex, because the simple reality is that the Daily Wire was a phenomenal, organization a few years ago in really being able to capture a very large percentage of the youth of America. Honestly, the Daily Wire was a significant catalyst to Donald Trump getting elected for this 2024 election. You got the Ben Shapiro's, the Matt Wallace, these very big right-wing influencers. The Candace Owens was on there. But again, one thing that we've covered on this show is that the MAGA movement has completely collapsed now. You have start to see the Tucker Carlson's, Tucker Carlson obviously has been, very vocal about this. We've started to see Candace Owens, really talk about this. And so all of a sudden, you're left with a very fragmented right-wing society here in America where, you have the hardcore MAGA loyalists who are always going to be loyal to Donald Trump, but they are few and far between now. And honestly, the thing is that more people are waking up. And when you go to the gas pumps and you see that disruption, it is a major, major problem. And again, there's an interesting clip I saw yesterday. I've actually got this coming up in one of my videos where Donald Trump said, look, this was his campaign promise, is a video clip from his campaign trail where he said, look, energy is the problem that we need to solve. We need to get gas under $2 a gallon. We now need to make sure that housing's affordable, groceries is affordable. This is how we revive the United States economy. And I kind of made a joke. I said, wow, I wish this guy that ran for the presidency in 2024, I wish he was, in the White House right now, because that's a total different man. And again, going back to the very first question on the channel, when are we going to admit that Iran does not have nuclear ambitions? Well, he can't, because that's the whole justification. Hey guys, you're going to have to pay $5 a gallon for gas, but guess what? It's going to save you from having a mushroom cloud being dropped on your head. That's the line of messaging here. And Alex, I got one clip I want to play here. It's really funny. I do want to give a shout out to Wealthy Whisper for a super chat. He says, these countries must protect themselves from the U.S., a government that lies to its own people and interferes everywhere. Guess what? I've got a clip that it's a funny clip here, guys. Let's bring some comedy in here. Let's roll this clip to show you what the U.S. government has done over the last 6 years.
We're sorry to say that because of the COVID pandemic, prices are going up this year. But we'll get them down next year.
Because of supply chain issues, prices are going up again. But we'll fix it next year.
Because of the war in Ukraine, prices are going up again. But seriously, next year we're bringing them down.
Because of shrinkflation, we're proud to say that prices have stayed the same. But now you're getting way less.
Because of bird flu, prices have gone up again. Primarily, the price of eggs have quadrupled.
Thanks to tariffs, prices are going up again. But for the other countries, not you guys. We'll fix it next year.
Because of the war in Iran, prices are going up again. But it's only going to last a couple weeks, and gas prices definitely will not be affected by this. Bruh.
Well, some truth to that.
Sometimes we got to bring in a little comedy here, Alex, at the top of the hour here, just to make sure that we, this is what is happening in middle day America. This is what people are being frustrated about, because every single year it's another problem. It's another big thing. And again, this was the campaign promise where Donald Trump said, look, you're not going to have a new world war with me. You're not going to have a World War III. We play that in our intro every single week, Alex. And, the problem is that I got an interesting statistic for everybody here. A new Washington Post ABC poll came out. 61% of Americans now believe that the Iran war was a mistake. Alex, let's play a little game here. How long do you think it took for 61% of Americans to realize that the Iraq war was a mistake? What time period? How long do you think that took for the Iraq war? No
I wanna
guess?
give-
I'll help you out. No, fair enough. That's a tough question. So it took 3 years for Americans for 60% of Americans to believe that Iraq was a failure. It took 6 years for the Vietnam War for Americans to realize that it was a mistake. It's taken 2 months. We're 2 months into this conflict, and already Trump has lost the majority of Americans who now realize this has been a mistake. Because again, up until this point, Alex, we're entering week 10. Can you name one United States strategic military objective that has been achieved? Right? We have not had a regime change. We have not, captured any enriched uranium. The stockpiles of missiles are still at around 60% capacity, according to the United States government's own estimates. We still have Iran, supporting Hezbollah and other proxies in the region. And guess what? The Strait of Hormuz still remains fractured and closed. Now, of course, we see the United States also putting in a blockade. But like I mentioned at the beginning, this is a game of chicken. If you know that game of chicken is when you have two drivers on the road, they're both driving towards each other for a head-on collision until somebody says, peels off at the end. But again, when you're Iran, you have nothing left to lose, right? They can go the distance because they're already been hammered, right? They've already been, they're used to this. They've been sanctioned for 47 years. You're thinking economic pain. All they've known for 47 years is economic pain. For God's sakes, they've been cut off the U.S. dollar for the better part of half a century. They've been sanctioned from the U.S. government for 5 decades. You think this is something new? You don't think these Iranian people are resilient and that they have what it takes to go the distance? But again, Trump is playing with fire, and most likely he's going to get burned here very soon.
Yeah, I really like your comment about, the Iranian people are being quite resilient, to be honest. Can you imagine having 20,000 warheads being bombed all over your country and managing to move forward every day and know that if you're resilient and you can get through this, that hopefully the future will be bright. And it's hard to see through these dark clouds that Americans have bombed throughout that country for the last couple of months. Now, we're expecting an Iranian government to come to the table to negotiate with Mr. Trump. I wouldn't negotiate anything. I would just say, you know what? How about we wait this out? How about we wait this out another 30 days, maybe 60 days, and we'll get back to you, Trump administration. Because when you send Jared Kushner over, 48 hours, most of our officials are murdered or killed by your commander-in-chief in the United States. So if I was the Iranians, I wouldn't even negotiate. I wouldn't even talk about negotiation. I wouldn't even get into negotiations. I wouldn't even try to accept diplomacy from the Americans because that sailed a long time ago. I would wait until we see oil at around 180 to 220 a barrel. Then I would say, Don, do you want to pick up the phone? Do you want to discuss what's happening? Because your entire economy is about to be torpedoed. There's another part I want to bring up here, since we have the commander-in-chief who's been renamed the traitor-in-chief by me and the traitor-in-chief by Cyrus. But let's have a look at how our honest, reputable administration of the United States, what they do to financial markets on a late Friday in May. Let's have a look at this clip. So I'm going to give you the visual here, guys. And let's have a look at a $950 million short position. Placed via the futures. That's when grandma and grandpa and ma and pa are long gone to bed after the market is closed. The derivatives market and the futures market is wide open for the trader-in-chief's administration or people close by that get information, trade on it. I don't know anyone that has a spare change of $950 million to put a bet on, I don't know, minutes before a truth, or I'll call it Trump social, goes out to the market. But you can see there, 104 leaked, public news released, 115. And what happens? Somebody makes a cool $200 million in 30 minutes. So that's just of the big trades that we know. And I think that this is all about cash. And I think that the Trump administration has underestimated the impact of this war. They actually believed, and what you said many times, Cyrus, that they thought that this was going to be a Venezuela 2.0. We'll go into Venezuela and we'll go into Iran. 48 hours later, we'll obliterate everybody in the government. And by Monday morning, the Strait of Hormuz is ours. The pipelines are rerouted to the United States, and Bob's your uncle. Thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I have an interesting clip here. So let's play this clip. This is from Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany. I want everybody to understand what the Europeans and what a lot of people around the world are thinking of Donald Trump. Let's play this clip.
It is quite obvious that the Americans have absolutely no coherent strategy whatsoever. And the fundamental problem with these kinds of conflicts is always the same. It is not enough to simply get yourself in, you must also figure out how to get yourself out again. We witnessed that reality quite painfully in Afghanistan over the course of 20 long years. We saw the exact same thing happen in Iraq. So this entire situation is, as I have mentioned previously, at the very least it was ill-considered, and I really do not see at this present moment which one you mean. What strategic exit the Americans are choosing now, especially since the Iranians are obviously negotiating very skillfully, or for that matter, very skillfully not negotiating.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty powerful clip there when you realize, our European allies are essentially saying there is no coherent strategy from the United States government. And this has been a continuous theme that we've seen. And again, we've seen the flip-flopping that has come from the Trump administration regarding this war in Iran. I mean, we'll take it back to day one with Marco Rubio saying, guys, we started a war because we thought that Israel would attack Iran. And if they were to attack Iran, then Iran would retaliate against Israel. Therefore, we struck them first to prevent the retaliation. I mean, this unbelievable word salad that it's like, man, if you're going to tell a lie, or you're going to really, try to fabricate something, you got to have a better story. But I mean, he just said the quiet part out loud. And then the next day he got hammered. Wait a second. You just said we went to war for Israel. I never said that. I never said that we're going to war for Israel. But the issue here is that we've seen this constant flip-flopping. Alex, you bring up the $200 million made in that. That was one trade of many. I mean, this has basically happened like 3 weeks in a row. I don't know. Did you see the news that Trump's sons are now got like a $1.6 billion kind of defense contract with some other companies? I mean, basically, we've seen the Trump administration has made a tremendous amount of money. Donald Trump's net worth has now over $7 billion, since he's entered into the White House. So we see a lot of, a tremendous amount of manipulation. We just see an enrichment, within the Trump family. Everybody's doing well within the Trump family. But unfortunately, did you see the stock price of the Trump stable coin, whatever that is? I think it's down like 90% now. So again, imagine these MAGA, the MAGA loyalists who are so excited to, buy this Trump meme coin and the stocks, from Trump. All of that is down to historic lows right now. And so they're the ones left holding the bag. You can imagine, the early investors were able to sell that at an all-time high and then basically get stuck. It reminded me of this whole NFT craze. If you remember that NFT craze where, Justin Bieber was paying $1 million for some type of, digital sticker that's now worth a couple $1,000. It's no different than that. It's really an unprecedented time that we're looking at. But again, I think that's that's a really important point I want people to understand is when you have our European allies coming out and essentially just calling out saying, look, we have no coherent strategy. We've seen the failure from Afghanistan. We're now looking at something similar to Iran. This is not good news for the United States long term at all.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're mentioning the Trump's interest on deals. In fact, there was another social media influencer that questioned that deal on the weekend, and Eric and Donald Jr. snapped back and said, that's defamation. Another thing that I want to bring up is the deals that these guys are in. They are in Liberty Financial. They are in American Bitcoin. If you look at American Bitcoin and you pull up a 1-year chart, it's pretty much a flat line. And the other interesting point that we have to take into consideration is the manipulation that goes on in the market. Now, the average person thinks that, okay, the FBI is going to come in and save the day. They're going to jump in and say, okay, we caught you. You've done a $200-300 million trade on, let's say, a Truth Social tweet or whatever we call it from Truth Social. The issue here is that these organizations like the SEC, they only have civil abilities to go after people that have profited. Now, it usually takes the Department of Justice to get involved to bring criminal charges against those. But as we know, the Department of Justice is busy right now with certain files and, of course, finding a new head. I don't know if we have a graph of American Bitcoin, but I would like to show you guys if we do. Yes, we do. Let's pull this up on the screen here, guys. If we do a year out on that, I'll see if it's possible. Year to date, in 1 year. Let's try 1 year. And I'm just looking at the chart just like you guys are, okay? And seeing if it's possible to go out. Anyway, if you go out a year on that, there you go. Happy Shareholders Day on American Bitcoin, boys. That's the Trump graph. So, I mean, it's these things that really drive me crazy because they burn through one and then reload on another. And if that idea doesn't run, they burn through that one and reload on another. So it's very complicated to understand that. And, with my 20 years in the derivatives market, I have seen some crazy stuff go on, but in the last, I would say 6 months, I have seen some very questionable trades. And we have to ask ourselves, how does the average person make money on these markets if we have insiders or people putting $950 million bets down? And that has a lot to do with, I would say, understanding these markets, getting educated, educating yourself. If anybody wants to reach out, they can reach out to me. I'll put my email in my description below and I can explain a little bit more to everyone. But Cyrus, this is really difficult. How is it that the administration can so openly break companies? This is the backbone of America here. If you're not broken by the oil spike, you're going to be broken by the tariff spike that's just around the corner that has kind of gone off the news feeds. And if you're not broken by the tariffs, you're broken by the corruption. And if you're not broken by the corruption, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I can only imagine the pressure on the average hardworking American right now.
No, I mean, I think that's the main theme right now. We're looking at. There's another interesting statistic here. I mean, I mentioned earlier, I got some fresh stats here because they're actually coming out in a new video that I've got coming out tonight. I got a new video coming on my channel called, "The Moment the World Realized Iran is a World Power," and it's an interesting video, discussing exactly what we're seeing here. Is that Iran has proven to the world that it has a tremendous amount of leverage. And what we're looking at, Alex, is, again, I mentioned earlier, GDP numbers came out. Growth for Q1 2026, 2%. Forecast was 2.2. Again, from the Trump administration, they said They said last year, about 6 months ago, they predicted the first quarter of 2026 would be around 5% growth. They thought these tariff revenue was going to be great. They thought everything was going great. Alex, how about this interesting stat? There is now about 50% of Americans can no longer afford their car payments. And so they have now had to go to an 84-month loan. That's a 7-year loan on their car payments in order to get that monthly payment down. So we've seen an unprecedented amount of car defaults here in the United States. We've seen that prices have increased to the highest level in the past 4 years. Gas average right now is $4.34 a gallon across the United States. And right now we have about 55% of Americans now believe that they are in a worse financial position than at any time before. Now, that's the highest percentage in the last 25 years. That's higher than the 2008 global financial crisis. That's higher than the 2020 global pandemic. So again, you're starting to see what we've been calling for a long time. And again, we've mentioned this a lot, and because we kind of give people a warning. This is going to wash out here in the summer months. It's coming, and again, within weeks. We're talking May this year. This May, we're going to see oil going above $150 a barrel. Gas prices are going to continue to rise. When that happens, like the first clip that we played, Jerome Powell, people are going to spend less money. When less money is consumed, are being spent, then obviously the economy starts to retract. And so again, it's a ripple down effect. We've seen Spirit Airlines go bankrupt. We're coming up to the travel season, the summer travel months. It's going to be a little bit chaotic. But I do have one final clip that I want to play here, guys. And I think it's important because it kind of goes back to really understanding this Trump administration. This is from Pete Hegseth, who is the Secretary of Defense, now renamed the Secretary of War. More appropriate because it seems like we just can't stop, starting these new wars everywhere we go. But just listen to the dialogue here, guys. Let's play this clip from Pete Hegseth and what's really going on.
We had to start this war, you just said, 60 days ago, because the nuclear weapon was an imminent threat. Now you're saying that it was completely obliterated?
They had not given up their nuclear ambitions, and they had a conventional shield of thousands of missiles.
So Operation Midnight Hammer accomplished nothing of substance. It left us at exactly the same place we were before. So much so that
their facilities were bombed and obliterated. Their ambitions continued, and they're building a conventional shield.
Let me try again.
It's the North Korea strategy. You know this very well. The North Korea strategy was use conventional missiles to prevent anybody from challenging them, so they could slow walk their way to a weapon. President Trump saw Iran at its weakest moment, took an action to ensure, in a way that only the United States of America could do with our Israeli partners,
and yet
to ensure their
haven't
conventional
given up the
shield was
one
brought to
other
heel,
question,
which we've done.
if I could get to it. So on you.
So again, here we have, guys. We can see that it's just a constant barrage of lies and just nonsense, and they're just everything that the Trump administration is doing right now is just trying to justify this war. Okay, Operation Midnight Hammer, that was the 12-day war that was in last June. It was the United States going in, obliterating. That's the literal verbiage from Donald Trump himself and the White House, saying that, look, we won. Everything's been obliterated. There's nothing that's going to happen. It's just very strange to then come back and say, well, you know what? Now they were just weeks away. Well, actually, they weren't weeks away, but they still have that ambition to be there. So again, you just see this trying to justify this war. But again, I think the American people have really lost hope in this because, like I said, 2 months in, 61% of Americans now believe that the Iran war has been a mistake. Basically, the only percentage that is keeping that up is the diehard MAGA, loyalists that are just going to support Donald Trump no matter what he does. They support him. They want to make sure that, they unfortunately, they've just been led down this road and they just can't differentiate the reality from the fiction that's happening in the White House. But, the simple thing here, Alex, and, to make a really good point is that Iran has suffered a tremendous amount over the last 5 decades. They have been through an unbelievable amount of financial strain. This is nothing new. And I think I told you this to you on a live stream about 2 months ago. I went to get a haircut here in Las Vegas, and the lady that cut my hair was from Iran. And I asked her, what's going on in your country? What about people? What do you think of the United States? Everything like that. And she said, the first thing she said was, we're a very resilient people. We're very resilient. When the United States attacks us, you have to remember, we're talking about Persia, one of the longest living civilizations in the world. We have been resilient. This is our culture because we know that the United States has been under attack for, attacking us for decades and decades. This is not new. This is not like some out of the blue thing that just started on February 28th. No, this has been going on for 47 years. They know how to deal with this. They're prepared to go the distance. And again, I mean, the reality is that when you launch a war, you're working closely with Israel. Iranians know that. The European partners know that. The entire world knows that, Alex. There's no doubt about this, that the entire world knows that the United States went to Iran because Benjamin Netanyahu gave them the green light. Benjamin Netanyahu gave them bad information saying that, look, you could knock them out within a couple of weeks. It's going to be like Venezuela. They're going to have no ability to control the Strait of Hormuz. Don't worry about it. You're worried about oil markets? Don't worry. Ben, we broke this down. I think it was last week's live stream or maybe the week before, where we saw Benjamin Netanyahu flew to the United States. He was the one that went to the Situation Room, a room that is dedicated only for the United States president and the top military officers. But yet Benjamin Netanyahu sat at the head of the table. Trump sat to the side. He laid a PowerPoint presentation. Trump took the bait. And here we are 2 months later, and we've made no progress, no military objectives achieved. And again, just utter chaos and disruption to the global economy. And it's sad to see. It's really sad to see because it's going to continue to get worse. And I think we just really want people to understand the truth. And I'm grateful to YouTube. I'm grateful that we have a platform like this. I'm grateful that you and I can join every Sunday, and give our fans, the information that they want. So again, guys, thank you so much for being here. I mean, this is just so amazing to see the amount of people here in the stream. Our show, Let's Talk Geopolitics, continue your week. Great job to you, Alex, and your team. Was bringing us the best graphics and everything. But I want to get it back to you as we continue to analyze this crazy world that we live in.
Yeah, and I'm curious about your video that comes out tonight, Cyrus. Have we got a link or maybe a thumbnail for that? Or
I don't have one yet. We're working on that getting up, but it's going to be an interesting video, essentially talking about the moment the world realized that Iran was a superpower. And I'll kind of give you the intro. I'll maybe share that with you guys. This is the thing that's changed, Alex, is that we're not dealing with how do we stop Iran. That's not the question. The question is, how do we deal with Iran? How do we negotiate with Iran? And there's a really great professor that I'm a huge fan of, Professor Robert Pape. I had the chance to interview him on my YouTube channel. He has an amazing Substack called The Escalation Trap. From day one, Robert Pape has been bang on in his analysis. He has basically called this exactly the way that it has unfolded. And, again, the message and the rhetoric coming out here in the United States is that the blockade is going well. Everything's going. Iranians are going to fold. They are so desperate for a deal. The Iranians are going to come. Actually, a lot of, there's a guy from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, Robert Brooks. He's a senior economist. I've been calling him out on Twitter because if you go on Twitter, he just said, "Wow, the blockade from the United States is going so brilliant. This is exactly what we should have done to Russia." Actually, if we would have blockaded Russia, Putin would have folded immediately. Well, first of all, how do you blockade Russia? One of the, literally the biggest country in the world. They're going to have many, many capabilities to start exporting their oil. What are you going to blockade their entire, eastern coast, right on the ocean? Give me a break. I mean, this is the fantasy world that these guys live in. And so what he said is, Robin Brooks is like, this is amazing. Donald Trump is so brilliant. This blockade is going so well. And, any minute, the Iranians are going to come and beg for a deal. And I said, this is the fantasy world that you live. And this is the problem. This is the problem when these analysts, they mistake reality with what they want to believe in their head. Okay. And this is exactly what happened with the tariff. Alex, you and I, we called it from day one.
Yeah.
We saw this tariff war last year, absolute disaster. What's going to happen? Trump's going to have to walk it back because there's no way that the United States economy can continue with 185% tariffs against Chinese goods. You're going to look at an entire crash that's going to happen. And what happened? Obviously, Trump had to walk it back. We knew that. We saw that because you and I study the markets. You and I do global trade. You and I are constantly doing import and export, between the United States, Canada, China. I mean, we've been in this business for 20 plus years. We're
on the streets. We're in the warehouses. You just walked through a trade show just recently here. I think you were in Barcelona. You checked out a Huawei, a major company here that everybody wrote off years ago.
I mean, the video about this coming week is about the AI race. You see NVIDIA losing massive market share in China because obviously the tariffs and, Donald Trump saying we can't do business. Huawei AI chips are skyrocketing, booming right now. Massive revenue for Huawei. I mean, the way that Huawei's been able to pivot has been incredible. But, here's the thing that Robert Pape said. I want to get back to my main point here. The world is not looking at how do we defeat Iran. They're saying, how do we negotiate with Iran? And that switch, he said, is the emergence of a new world power. Because before this war started, Iran had no leverage. They didn't have control of the Strait of Hormuz, but now they were able to take control of it. You have the United States military, biggest, strongest military in the world, supposedly. We have been basically neutralized. Let's not talk about those two container ships, or not container ships, those military, ships that had to go back. Alex, apparently there was a lint fire, Alex, on one of the dryers in the washroom. And by the way, that lint fire got so out of control that it now has to go back to the U.S. port, and it needs 15 months of repair in order to be salvaged and be able to put back on the open waters. Is anybody actually thinking that was actually a dryer fire? Give me a break. I mean, that's kind of the worst propaganda that you can come up with. But again, now we have actually credible reports from CNN and the Wall Street Journal saying that the United States military bases in the Middle East, Alex, have been obliterated. They've been absolutely hammered. And again, we were calling that, and we were interviewing guests, months ago that said, look at this, guys. All of these U.S. military bases in the Middle East, they've all been hammered. U.S. media is not telling you that, but now they're telling it because why? It's 2 months after the case. And so now they're going to slowly roll it out kind of on a Saturday morning. They're going to put it right behind the sports section, because, they don't want people to see that. It's the weekend. People are not looking at the news right now. But all of a sudden, it's like, oh, yeah, by the way, guys, we got those U.S. military bases got hammered in the Middle East. That was the Iranian military that was able to take those out. So, again, there's a lot of truth that you're not going to be able to understand. Certainly, if you're listening to Trump. I'm going to leave one last thing. I know I'm going off on a tangent here. Alex, did you see a tweet? I shared this tweet yesterday. Did you see what the White House put? They put out a clip of Trump saying, we're winning. And they played that clip on repeat for 60 minutes straight. That was the social media post. So so it's amazing. I'm like, how desperate are you? I mean, that is like North Korea level propaganda where you're just tweeting out. It's basically a 3-second clip played on repeat for literally 60 minutes. And the tweet from the White House is, enjoy this clip, guys. It's 60 minutes of Donald Trump saying we're winning. And it's like, wow, is this the level that we're at right now? Is this the real world that we're living in, Alex?
It's interesting that you say that. And again, to all the people watching this program, it's not about us trying to be right all the time. It's about us doing the research. Living here in China helps my ability to get the truth to you. Now, there's a couple of things that, Cyrus and I have predicted. They've come right. They've hit the financial markets. We're not wanting hardship on the financial markets, but we're trying to give you the lead here on what's happening. My breakdown a couple of weeks ago of oil was spot on. I hit it right on the nail, and supported by some of the research that Cyrus did as well. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple of things that just to let everyone kind of sink in tonight, where we saw paper oil at 102, spot oil is probably, we call it dated Brent or dated Texas. We're going to see that probably 20 to 30% premium. Now, if oil is not getting to these refineries have a lot of staff that they have to employ, which brings me to a rather interesting find here. On February 19th, Chevron California, the El Segundo, had an explosion. Triggered emergency protocols was shut down for a while. March 5th, Marathon, Texas City. Fire control quickly, but limited disruption, but added to regional unease. March 23rd, another one in Texas. Major explosion in the diesel triggered by shelter in place. Okay. April 9th, in Mexico. Second fire under a month at the flagship Olmeca refinery. The 16th of April in Victoria, Australia, 13-hour fire, fell to 60% of capacity. The 18th of April, the BP Sherry Point in Washington, explosion and fire. This, to me, I'm not saying these are deliberate, but it's rather interesting how many refineries are catching fire or blowing up when there's not even missiles flying in the United States. Something to just think about. Now, let's talk about the United States and what they have said to China. And this is going to raise some red flags with you, Cyrus. Let's pull up the story of the refinery in China. I think we had a China news story here. Let's have a look here. So China's Commerce Ministry blocks U.S. sanction against Chinese refineries. 5 refineries are accused of buying Iranian oil. U.S. sanctions violate international law and basic norms of international relations. Basically, the Americans are saying, if you send any of that Iranian oil to your refineries in China, we're going after you with sanctions. And the Chinese government is saying, nice try. Anybody in China that follows the rules of the United States can basically kiss their ass. So that's where that's going. So we're seeing a high stakes game there. Now, something else I want to point out to you, and I'm really excited to see your video tonight, Cyrus. Let's chat about that after a moment. I'll just let you know what I've been up to in the last week. I went to the Auto 2026 show here in Beijing. And I know you're a guy that follows the new energy vehicle market. This is my video out tonight. And what did I see in Beijing, guys? I saw 1,451 cars basically on display. There was over 81 new premier world releases in 17 halls. And Cyrus, can you guess who I didn't see at the show in Beijing? What car companies?
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of them. Probably Ford, GM, Buick, any American brand. And Alex, I'm so excited to watch your video tonight because I saw a lot of tweets about this. And I didn't get a chance to go to the Beijing Auto Show this year, but I know your videos are always fantastic. You always do. I think you do the best kind of walk and talks, whether it's at the Canton Fair, the auto show. If you guys haven't seen one of Alex's, show videos where he's actually at a trade show, they're the best. They're the best in the business.
Thanks, buddy.
You have you bring an amazing energy when you're there. I always love to watch them. But no, the simple thing is that, Alex, you know what's so fun? I saw BYD debut a new charging system that essentially you can plug in the charger. It can take you from about 20% battery level to about 80% in the span of 150 seconds. Yeah. So that's essentially not much longer than filling up your car as a gas tank, right? Yeah. So the one barrier to entry there maybe for a lot of people is the charging time, right? A lot of people don't like that charging time, that you're kind of limited, but that's kind of where the industry's going, right? CATL. Obviously, the number one battery brand in the world.
In my video 1,500 kilometer range.
1,500. That's amazing. And so I think, I'm excited to see, these as well. And guys, I'm also literally 2 weeks away from flying to China as well. Alex, I'm looking forward to seeing you back in Chongqing. I'm going to be in China on the ground for 2 months this summer, going back with my wife and 3 children. We go back every summer, and I'm honestly, Alex, I'm excited to go to a civilized country that is actually just more organized, very clean, very safe, and more importantly, I think moving forward in a very solid direction. I've been I've been a little burned out. I've got to be honest. Being here with the news cycle, with the constant political mess that is the United States. But I'm looking forward to getting a break from that, and also kind of switching up our content here on YouTube. Going back to some vlogs. Of really showcasing what's going on in China, because it's a country I think that's largely misunderstood, but it's a country that's gaining very quickly. And again, when you need to be on the ground in China, you need to be at the Beijing Auto Show, seeing what's happening there, because that was a huge buzz. There was so much buzz on Twitter going on about that show. So again, I'm really looking forward to this video, because it really is going to showcase, what the future of our world looks like. And as the United States, again, interesting thing here, what's been the biggest catalyst to China's EV success? The Iran war. There has been unprecedented demand from countries around the globe, realizing that, guys, this is not going to sort itself out anytime soon. Even here's kind of my ending note for today. Even if the Strait of Hormuz opens tomorrow, let's say that Iran and the United States get some magical deal, everything's squared away. That's basically impossible, right? We know it's not going to happen tomorrow, but let's say it does. Okay, you're still going to look at oil going to $150 a barrel. Okay, it's still going to have a very long financial crunch, because the key thing I've said in today's video, this has been the largest disruption to the entire energy market that anyone who's living on planet Earth has seen in their lifetime. That does not happen without this washing out somewhere, and it will come this summer. So again, we're starting to realize, I went to Azerbaijan last year, to film a video. Super fun, because I went to BYD and we filmed a video there. And that was my first time driving a BYD car myself. And that's what was so cool in Azerbaijan. They said, look, we used to import Ford motors exclusively. We used to import secondhand cars from the United States, Ford, GM, because everybody wanted American. And then we realized, hey, and we're talking to Azerbaijan. Don't forget, they're a massive oil producing country. Petrol is very cheap in Azerbaijan. But they realized, even though gas is affordable, we see what's happening in the market. So they pivoted. They said, we're not buying any more secondhand cars. We're going to try to go get a BYD dealership. They did. They can't keep the cars on the showrooms, Alex. They're selling 150 cars a month at this one little dealership, which is, obviously it's very difficult to import those, it's a process, but 150 a month. Geez, that's 3 cars a day. They can't even, some of the models they couldn't even show me, because it's like, we don't have one on the floor. As soon as we get it in, we sell it. So we don't even have one that's sitting in the showroom, because, it's selling so fast. But again, another huge win for China, as the world is moving towards EVs. The world is realizing that renewable energy, China, positioned itself very brilliantly. That's not a strategy, Alex, that started last year. It's a strategy that started 25 years ago, investing in high-speed rail, investing in the infrastructure that needs. And, it's always funny. I always hear people say, well, look at the Chinese stock market. It hasn't gone up really a lot. Well, you know what? China takes care of its people. China takes care of its people, and it makes sure that it has things that, daily life is affordable in China. The cost of living, we've seen real estate prices go down in America. Everyone's saying, look at that. Real estate market's starting to contract in China. Look at, that shows you how weak China is. It's interesting, Alex. 80% of Americans are begging for the real estate prices to come down here in the United States, because it's unaffordable. People can't afford a home, can't afford a place to live. So again, really looking forward to going back to China. Seeing you soon, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Cyrus. And the thing about being on the streets here, guys, it really is an eye opener. You have to understand the amount of contrast that, and that's what I love about these live streams with Cyrus's, broadcasting from his studio, the Let's Talk Geopolitics out of Nevada in Las Vegas. That's great. And I'm here in Chongqing, China, city of 36 million. 6 years when I got here, the air was not bad, but now 6 years fast forward, new energy vehicles, I would say every second or even 2 out of every 3 cars on the roads are NEVs, and blue skies are here. The noise pollution is down as well. These things are not fictional. You can see it. And Chongqing was never really a city that captured the attention from global influencers, but 600 million visitors this year. Every influencer under the sun has pretty much come to this city. and I helped get the ball rolling. And what's fascinating is one of our more popular walk and talk vlogs is with Cyrus and I just walking the streets of Chongqing, chatting with people, having a pleasant talk. And I look forward to that. And I look forward to going much deeper here on a lot of, I got some cool things planned for you, Cyrus. So looking forward to you getting over here.
Yeah, I'm excited too, man. Yeah, that was, my first time to Chongqing. I think it was 2024 when I came out to visit you there, bud. And, really excited. I think what was fun is the energy, the energy that people, what's really cool there is that Chongqing's become one of the hottest tourist destinations in China, right? So walking the streets, you see so many people from other parts of China there that want to come see, this, what is it called? The cyberpunk city of China. Yeah. Arguably one of the most visually stunning, cities. I mean, it's such an Instagrammable, actually, I think 2025, it was voted the #1 most Instagrammable city in the world. Because you just get so many cool shots that you can take there. But I mean, obviously, besides the cool shots and Instagram stuff, I mean, you got to look at quality of life. How do you live there? How do you actually make things happen? And so again, I mean, that's where I've got some travels. I'm going to Shanghai, back to Beijing. I'll be based in Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Chongqing. Going to Hainan. I mean, that's 6 places right now, that we're going to be traveling to this summer. Obviously, Hong Kong, that's 7. So, I mean, guys, really get prepared for some interesting vlogs because, I want to showcase China a little bit more than I have on the past. We're obviously all 7 of these places, we're going to be doing videos on the ground there. We're going to keep going with the Let's Talk Geopolitics. Obviously, we've achieved some really good consistency here, coming at you guys live every weekend. We love to do it because it kind of prepares us for the week ahead. We can recap the past week. Again, Alex, like I mentioned, we're going into week 10. We'll see as, what the major storylines coming out. But I want to thank you for today's stream. And let's meet back again a week later. Let's run it back and continue to give the people what they want.
Don't forget to watch Cyrus's video, guys. He's putting it out tonight. Mine's out in about an hour. Check my channel out. But Cyrus, what's the title of your video again?
It's going to be The Moment the World Realized Iran is a World Power.
There we go.
All right. So check that out. That is going out in about 10 hours on my channel. So we will look forward to seeing everybody very soon. Alex, thank you so much for today's stream.
My pleasure. Good night, everyone.